Welcome to the Pecha Kucha podcast. My name's Jason, and today I'm joined by Lex, who's going to introduce himself very shortly. We also have on the switcher behind the screen Martin, who I might just be inviting to join the conversation in bits and pieces because Martin and Lex working in similar roles but very different as well, and there might be some synergies. We could get some interesting conversation going. Yeah. So first of all, Lex, would you mind just introducing yourself for us?
Hi, Jason. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been working in international brand marketing for the last 20 years, and I've been spending probably the majority of my career working on heritage brands, so brands that have been around for over a century, that have needed to evolve over time. So that's been a super interesting part of my background.
Very interesting, because my first question is really about, done a bit of research on you, obviously, and you've been working around brands, as you say, for over 20 years. And I wonder, like, you've obviously traveled the globe and worked with different brands. Is there anything that stays constant, like in terms of time and messaging, I suppose, during that period? Is there one thing that or a couple of things that stand out that seems to be consistent regardless of time? And
yeah, I think there's two things for me, I would say. Firstly, it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but it's authenticity. And I think that's super important because authenticity lends itself to so many parts and facets of the brand that are important to consumers and the people that trust the brand and have grown with the brand over time. And then that leads to the emotion. I think great brands are built on emotion. Either they solve a problem or they are something that's been part of your childhood, perhaps, from a long time ago. And so emotion and the care that comes from that emotion is always part of that brand story. And I think that's the one thing that's been consistent, whether it's been a vodka brand that's enjoyed in bars and taverns all over the world for the last 100 years, or a sports brand that has been held by young sports boys and girls at private school or independent schools, right to the international field with professionals. It's the emotion that is the thing that's important.
is it like, I just think of, we watch some of these brands like Nike, and as you say, whether it's an alcoholic brand, car brands, and you think, how do they do that? Wow, how do they just, because like Coke, we now associate Coke with Christmas because they've done this amazing thing with the truck and Santa Claus, and you go and you think of Christmas is coming when you see the Coke truck now, and you're going, this is mad. How do they create that emotion? What is it? Is there a magic ingredient, or is it timing? What do you think is?
I think it's consistency. I think it's consistency over time. I think there will always be, I suppose, fads. There will always be things that are more, what's the word? More sort of on time than other parts of marketing. But I think consistency, if you're doing it over time and time again, it reverberates with the consumer year after year. And so they then start to associate what they do with what the brand is doing. And then it almost becomes synonymous.
Very. So thinking about that, I know you've worked for the likes of Grays, Gilbert, again, global brands. I don't think you watch a rugby match without seeing a Gilbert rugby ball appearing.
It does crop up from time to time, yeah.
Doesn't it? Thinking about obviously what we've been talking about there in terms of that brand messaging, and a lot of these sports are built on traditions.
Yeah.
How do you balance tradition, I suppose, as a brand expert, brand manager, with innovation? And because I think sometimes things have to change, don't they?
Yeah.
And that can go against traditions of a sport, traditions of cultural traditions and things like that. How do you manage and balance that as a brand manager?
It's funny you say that. I don't know if that came up in your research, but one of the strap lines we had was tradition meets innovation. Yeah. So it's really a really good point to make. I think when you are the leader, especially, it depends where you're positioned in the market. If you're a leader, they will, or I say they, consumers and people that they're obviously interested in that sector will look to you for innovation because you're the leader, even though you may have built that reputation on tradition, because you're almost like the custodian of the brand. You're the custodian of the support of the sport. Sorry. And so, as a brand manager and as a marketeer, it's something that you need to take very seriously. You can't be too cavalier with things. I think lots of people want to make a name for themselves. They want to be responsible for that big campaign and say, "Oh yeah, I did that, and I was part of that." But I think the best marketers and the most successful, should I say, will balance that desire for innovation and desire for creativity with an appreciation of that heritage to basically say, look, I can't mess this up. I don't want to be. And we've seen some examples of that recently
Yeah.
in the car industry where potentially that brand heritage was maybe not respected as much as it should.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes, for that, I know you might be suggesting the Jaguar
I may do.
conversation. Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes we think, how can such big organizations maybe get it wrong? But is
Yeah.
it's, we've had some very interesting conversations. We had Emily Bond on, who was a rocket scientist, and she talks around, rocket science is built on failure. But I think most things are really built on failure.
Yeah.
It's how we find the right path forward. And it's very interesting that when organizations sometimes get it wrong, that they stick by that as well and try and push it through. And over time, it might become the right thing.
Yeah, it depends, I think, because it's that internal strategy versus agency strategy, and there are pros and cons of both. Not one is right over the other. I think it just depends where that brand or company is in that journey and along that graph of where their strategic change may be occurring. And I think I've always been a big fan of internalizing strategy. I think brands should own that all the time. But then you also, and I appreciate if you're in your own little echo chamber and you're doing your own thing for so long, you're not aware of the trends. You're not aware of what's happening. You're not looking potentially at the competition or innovation. And agencies are really good at that. They're really good at seeing, the wood for the trees. And so there's pros and cons to it. But yeah, potentially when you put all your eggs in one basket, you could get into problems, because I still think that brands should own their strategy, because ultimately they know their consumers better than everybody else if they're doing a good job with data, with CRM, and with listening to the market, which if they're successful, they absolutely should be.
Yeah, because it's very interesting sometimes, isn't it, that when you're trying, as a new business, you think like your logo and certain things about your brand has to tell everybody everything about what it is you do. Yet some of the most famous ones tend, maybe in the initial thoughts, you go like, what does a tick have to do with Nike?
Yeah.
What does three stripes have to do with Adidas?
Yeah.
The Puma one's a bit more obvious in that they have the animal on it. But it's very interesting that when you start out a business, that we fall into this trap of,
Yeah.
I want to call my business something, but then you try and create a brand that just tells the entire story, and sometimes you don't need to. Because I love the likes of Rory Sutherland at Ogilvy. Obviously, he's
Rory's great. I
stretches the
met Rory
limits.
once,
Is that
actually.
right?
Really nice guy.
I'd love to actually. I've had a conversation through email with Rory and his
Really,
agent.
he's a legend. Yeah.
I'm going to do my damnedest to get him here next year.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
But I think he's just as an unbelievable person. But it's like when you think of his messaging, sometimes being out there and pushing the limits can have a major impact on how people come with you on a journey with a brand, rather than you just having to have this logo or something that just tells everybody everything.
Yeah. It's that differentiation between brand and product. And I think one of the things that I heard a few years ago was kind of the Amazon litmus test. If you make a product or you spend a load of time doing something that Amazon could quite easily copy for a cheaper price, better price point, better, all those things, and you lose, you didn't build a brand, you build a product. Whereas if it's something that is a brand that people believe in and they're like, no, I'm not going to do the cheaper alternative. I'm going to spend that little bit more because of X, Y, Z, because of emotion, because of authenticity, because of heritage, because of, that's where the brand comes into it. And it's certainly a huge challenge, for entrepreneurs these days, getting in on the ground floor. But, we're seeing a lot of brands that are really capturing that. I mean, White Fox is doing really great. There's loads of brands that I think are starting to work out what their secret sauce is, which is for me incredibly exciting, because I've never created one on my own. I've always been fortunate enough to be handed a fantastic talisman to work with.
So thinking, obviously, like you say there, you're maybe not a creator brand, but I'm sure you've been in some unbelievable campaigns.
Yeah.
When it comes to brand, what do you say? What do you think is your biggest campaign? But on top of that, maybe what's the one you're most proud of?
It's funny. I think The one I'm proud of is not the biggest.
Yeah.
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 I think that the one I'm most proud of is a campaign called Gilbert Is. And it was created by the Gilbert marketing team a couple of years ago, that was awesome because it encapsulated every person that would interact or touch the brand. So it was genuinely for everyone, by everyone. And so it was a campaign that meant nothing when it came out, but the proof would be in the pudding over time. So it was like a ticker tape. Gilbert Is like a slot machine, that they kind of the numbers turn. It was like Gilbert Is, and then we had this slot machine effect that we could apply to completely 360, whether it was digital, whether it was print or whatever. And we would change the word at the end. So it was Gilbert Is grassroots, Gilbert Is independent schools, Gilbert Is Cheslin Colby, Gilbert Is, whatever. And it allowed us to say we are both figuratively and physically at the center of the game, whether you are a young person picking up a training ball for the first time, or you are Antoine Dupont. It was, we are here for you and we make stuff for you. And it wasn't huge in the sense of the media campaign, behind it and the investment, but it was just so applicable to every part of the game all over the world. It was something that we felt we really did break the mold on that one, because it was something that rugby hadn't done in the past.
Yeah.
It was usually for a certain group of people, because rugby is, a very, it's a sport that's played by many different people all over the world, from different ages, different cultures, different backgrounds. And so to come up with a campaign that ticked all those boxes, incredibly difficult. And I was very proud of the team for doing that.
Yeah, because it's like, I came from Wales originally, and obviously rugby's like a religion and a goldfish bowl in Wales, and it's very interesting when you look at the UK makeup, that generally rugby would have been identified more as that middle class, upper class sport.
Mm-hmm.
Yet in Wales, it was a very working class sport. It was coal miners and steel workers played it, and that's interesting.
Yeah,
that you say that that it's made up, and you're trying to create something that's multifaceted and touching that huge audience. And again, a sport that is struggling with their traditions even now. People wanting to play the sport. And it's how did they rebrand? And I think some of that is sitting in. I know they're trying a lot with rules and trying to adjust rules, but how are we making these sports interesting to young people? How do we, how do you get a kid off his Xbox onto a rugby field?
Yeah.
And I just think of that from a marketing challenge.
Yeah.
And I think, wow, I'm glad it's on them and not me.
And not me anymore, thankfully.
I know. It's such, and I suppose like anything, when you see big changes, especially when we see it in technology like AI at the moment, and the fear mongering around jobs and things like that marketing teams are now to counteract.
Yeah.
How product isn't going to be impacted by invite, or if it's impacted, this is how we are going to have to change our messaging.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that the whole teams behind big business and big industry at the moment must be running around frantically trying to work out what's the message we want to put to the world.
Indeed.
But thinking of that then and messaging to the world, if I think of Nike, I think of the tech. If I think of Coca-Cola, I think of Santa Claus. but I think of the tin, you know what I mean? And the logo. And then you go into the small business world. And what I'm noticing at the moment in the small business world, I am myself working to build me and my personal brand. How do you think that works in the corporate world? Because are we ever going to see the chief executive of Coca-Cola jumping behind the camera? Are we ever going to, what do you think from your experience, and even Gilbert and Gray's, what's the connection between personal brand and corporate brand, I suppose, because they're trying to get their logo out there, they're trying to get people familiar with it. But the way we're consuming content at the moment, we're consuming the story now.
Yeah.
And is there a point where that story can't compete with people because it's now just a logo or a brand? What do you think is there?
Yeah, it's super interesting, because if you think back to the popularity of Apple when, Johnny Ive was doing all of his creative workshops and videos, that I think opened up a window to that brand that people hadn't seen before, and they hadn't seen Apple for its creativity until it was so eloquently articulated through his keynote speeches. And so I think you can have a person that can embody the brand values really well. And I think in my experience, especially in industries that have very specific skill sets, like the alcohol industry, like the sports industry, you get personalities that people trust over time.
Yeah.
And when you know that that person has been the figurehead or the CMO or the chief product innovation officer for a certain business, and you start to get behind those people as identities, as their own individual personalities, I think it can definitely benefit the organization. Now, there are certainly, we were talking earlier, there are certainly organizations that don't want to lose their top talent by having their own personal brand come up too much, because then they worry that it'll overshadow it. I think that's natural, but I think that the more forward-thinking businesses are going to realize that whether it's the 1980s or it's right now, people buy from people, and so if you can put that right person in that right place, that's going to be what's going to push the brand forward.
I'm going to maybe throw this one over to Martin on the mixer. We'll
For
call him
sure,
Martin.
yeah.
Martin Irvine on the mixer. Martin, thinking of that, and obviously you're involved very much in that small business world at the moment, but where do you think that sort of connection or link is between personal brand and that corporate brand? What do you see in terms of the future for the corporate world, but also the small business world in terms of personal brand?
When we were speaking earlier on, we mentioned, Apple, obviously Apple, Steve Jobs, what he brought to it. But even at that, Steve Jobs' own personal journey from, being with Apple, but then on being removed from the business and then brought back in to be rejuvenated. But he almost built that culture in the face of that. He built a thing that's almost trust around it. I think in the corporate world now, trust and connection is a big thing. Exactly like I said, that it's people buy from people. And one question I was going to have, is the difference between brand and marketing. And one element is one's emotional and one's product. So for me, I think it offers a greater connection and a higher level of trust when there are people who have built brands and contributed to the development that Lexi has. That when they get to see those people and hear their values that contributed, it just amplifies the amount of trust that's there. I mean, there's so many businesses that actually don't have anyone or a face or a name behind the actual brand apart from corporate, which almost removes that personal aspect. That when they do introduce that personal aspect from that, it just offers a lot more connection in the terms of, yes, we can see that there has been human people that have actually built this brand right now. And particularly in the terms of, you'll see things within like the clothing range at the minute that you'll see, how much Brian Francis within Gymshark has been there and talked about his journey and the different roles he's played. More recently, it seems like the George Heaton for the Represent, stuff and everything else, and how they almost embody a lifestyle that they want people to aspire to attain by almost using that bridge and that gap by buying their clothes. So again, that filters down into almost any industry in the terms of, right, whether it's IT and technology. What do we want people to feel when they buy our products, or what do they want to mimic or attain to be like when they buy our products from that? So I think it's just taking one more evolution in terms of what a business offers.
That's it. I had a note down here, is the line between corporate and personal getting thinner then in terms of like that marketing and branding is it becoming so close that businesses are going to have to, like you say, find somebody to pop out there front and center a wee bit often, because I think it might be fair to say then that your David Beckhams and your superstars of the world fall in the marketing side of business. You put them up there front and center wearing your gear, hoping that somebody goes and buys it. But it's the person behind the organization then has to bring a different story to try and create an emotional connection to the company rather than...
Yeah, I think it's as media's evolved, media would always be that curation in the
Yeah.
past where you'd have the separation between personality, like, David Beckham's media and then consumer. And then over the last 10 to 15 years, because that line has just eroded so much that now they're getting messages directly in their inbox from consumers, the media have lost that curation power. And so it's added it's added a new tool to the marketing mix that never existed. And now businesses are having to shift around that to see where they fit in now. Whereas before they were the ones at front and center pulling all the strings. Now it's almost, okay, which strings do we need to pull and which are actually best left unpulled by us and more organic by the consumers and the personalities themselves.
Yeah, because there's a danger there as well, isn't it? Because of social media, and we talk about curation, the difference between curation when we were putting things in magazines and putting things into newspapers, there was an editor. And the editor made some choices. That's inappropriate. That doesn't go in.
Yeah.
Can't say that in our magazine. Now you can literally post anything.
Yeah.
And that comes with danger.
Yeah.
Very, very, I suppose, a few time bombs sitting there that if you put something out, it's like if you put something out in a magazine, you can sometimes very quickly retract that and pull that back. Whereas once it's out there on social media, you get something wrong and it just explodes now.
Yeah.
It's not, you know what I mean?
Just go to a Coldplay concert.
Yeah,
and then your life has changed forever.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
That you get something wrong.
Yeah.
And the explosion is unbelievable. Whereas years ago, you could have worked your way back from there. You know what I mean? If you got it wrong in a newspaper or a magazine, your concern was how many people did really buy this? How many are actually our consumers?
Yeah.
And all that. So you would maybe only a small proportion of your actual consumers were exposed to that in that print or that tradition. Whereas now, let's see, your entire consumer base is exposed to things if you get it wrong. So that must be obviously a challenge from marketing departments. And how do you control that messaging then? What happens in a big company if you think of you have are you responsible for your social media department as well? And how is that curated in terms of what messaging is going out there?
Yeah, it's funny because once upon a time it was whoever was media trained was the person that got to speak, and if you weren't, then you didn't. So it was very simple. Whereas now, if you think about it, younger members of the team who've got their fingers on the pulse. I always believe in putting the smartest people in the smartest positions. And if that's a young person with their finger on the pulse, then put them there so they can run that social media account. So they've got relevancy, they've got the right tone of voice and know what's going on. But if they haven't got experience and they haven't made the mistakes that potentially more senior members of the team have made, and so therefore have a bit more of a backup plan if things go wrong, that's when the dangers come in place. And so having sign-off processes is super important. And there's a lot of technology, social media monitoring platforms that allow, levels of sign-off and ticking things off, make things a lot easier. But yeah, it's something that you have to have a direct connection to the people on the front line who are doing those posts. And I think marketing managers these days, they probably had a bit of an easy ride a little while ago because things didn't happen so quickly. So there was so much more time to read it, double check it, triple check it, and then if it sounded right. Whereas now you just have to be able to react really, really fast in order to make sure that that's the right message. So it's certainly got harder.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would think similar circumstances from a lead, like business leadership in general, fall in that same category as well. That if you're old enough or if you're good enough, you should be old enough. It should never just be, they're too young to take on that role.
Yeah.
But I always say the signs of a good leader isn't when they're out there in front and you're winning and winning and winning. It's when you lose. Is the sign of a good loser. When things go wrong, when challenges appear, that's when you're measured. That's your true measurement of a leader, I think. And that's something that I'm all for, promoting and putting young people out there. But you also have to have the courage to back them whenever right, this is very unfamiliar ground for them. Now, me as the senior leader, maybe in the environment, I have to go and support them. I have to back them up, nurture them through that challenge, because I think that's the thing. You throw people out there sometimes and then it's nearly like sink or swim.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that. I think your job is to teach them to swim.
Yeah, I was very lucky. Yeah, that we were talking earlier, weren't we, about that nurturing piece. I was super lucky in that one of my mentors, a gentleman called Marco Ferrari, very, very, very intelligent, very strong marketer, been in the spirits industry for many years. He was one of those people that would do that, would teach me, bring me in, make sure that, you know, I was, he was, you know, checking things and going through it all. But it was almost success was, you will be good enough when you don't need to ask me anything. And it was almost the goal was, I don't want to see you in my office. Not because it was I don't want to see you in my office. It's because you should know the answers already. And I'm just coming for a rubber stamp and a doff of the cap, but everything's done. And that it was that journey from building that confidence from, oh my God, I couldn't possibly be given the keys to the social media account without checking, to I shouldn't be in this position if I can't have the keys to the social media account without checking. And it was that journey that I think is that nurturing sort of A to B that I'm really passionate about giving young professionals these days. And I do try my best.
Yeah, I find it very. I was at an event last Wednesday. I'd been asked a question around one of the biggest challenge of delivering TEDx, the event. And I says, look, as somebody that I've worked in leadership roles and empowered and supported people for years, but then I went into this role of being a solopreneur. And in the last sort of 5 or 6 years, you've been everything, you control everything. And then all of a sudden, I'm running an event where I have to start to entrust other people again and hand things out. But I didn't have that period of time to, who are these people? How do you learn that, yes, they have the skills or they don't have the skills or they need skills? I had to go and source and identify a supplier for the whole main production. And you're going, I need to trust these people. I absolutely need to say, right, because I can't go over there and tell them, what are you doing that right? Are you doing this wrong? Sort of thing. And I found that a challenge. I said that was a big challenge for me at that stage because I'd been so long away from working. There was one point I was managing 45 people, and brilliant team because I was very fortunate that we had a skilled team that you could literally just go and do that, and confident that 9 out of 10 times they executed to a very high standard. And then all of a sudden you don't have that anymore, that you are working for yourself and you're doing everything. Trying to say to that organization, right, away you go and leave them at it. But I said there was a point when I realized that I'd made the right decision, and it was because I was stood in a room, stood on this red dot, and I'm not sure if I have a selfie on my phone of me on this red dot. And if you
I think I saw you taking that selfie.
if you'd seen the environment, I was going, poof. And then by 11 o'clock at night, these boys had built a stage that I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
And then doing that sort of that weight lifts off your shoulders to go,
Yeah.
I have nothing to worry about. Not a thing to worry about tomorrow because these boys know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's like that reinforcement, isn't it? Of saying, and you get that with people as well then if you're nurturing or developing, because I always say in my sort of management journey, you might have given somebody a few jobs to see how they get on as a leader, and you can very quickly identify.
Yeah,
I don't show them anything. They have that skill, or right, they've got that bit wrong. They need a bit of nurturing there. But I think that's one of the, what I would class from a personal point of view, one of the hardest skills to develop, but the best thing you will ever have if you can have confidence to delegate and trust that person to go and do the job.
Yeah.
So I think, and I'd say that's very much the same in that marketing role, isn't it? That
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We're building a campaign. I'm going to trust you're going to write the message, and you don't want to be going and checking everything. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I try to approach it with that positive mental attitude sort of quote of, you try and think, well, what if it all goes wrong? But then it's but what if it all goes better than you could ever imagine? Yeah. And if you can, if your instinct can land you on the second one more than the first one, you're doing okay. And if you make a mistake a few times, we're only human. And I think that's really important as well, to remind people in that journey, make the mistakes and it's okay. Yeah. There's no one with a perfection box ticking every line, watching you.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe when I talk about trust, I think a lot of people, that when they start their leadership journey or their management journey, it's not the lack of ability to delegate. It's that they have a lack of trust that they will do the job as good as you.
Yeah.
And then having what I would class as the humbleness to say, you know what, they're actually better than me.
Yeah.
They've actually done that job better than I could do it.
Yeah.
And I think once you get to that point is where it becomes very, very important, isn't it? Because, like I said, I think when I see challenges with young leaders, young managers, it's usually a trust issue. It's, do I trust to outsource it? Do I trust the person I've given the job to? And a lot of it, that is down to, well, it's my name above the door or my name. I'm the manager. I'm the one who's going to get the flack if this goes wrong.
Yeah.
So it's built on trying to get to that trust point.
And if that success is measured by the right KPIs and the right metrics and the right success factors, and you're bringing those people that you're delegating to in on the ground floor when you start, they know what, whose skin's in the game. And so it's almost should make you feel a little bit better because you know that they know what's on, on the slate.
Yeah. Because I was actually having a conversation with Louise Keaton and Clark. She was on one of the episodes, and I'd said about we spend too much time on feedback and not enough time on feed forward.
That's interesting.
So I always talk that feedback's too late for me. I just think,
because it's after the fact. Yeah,
you've told them. Whereas if you can set visible expectations, if you can focus on feed forward, and what I mean by that is how often I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were telling me big organization, and they were talking about some of the challenges they have is turnover in terms of events and things like that. So that if they have an event on, one could have finished one night and they have to be up and running again by 6 o'clock the next morning because there's a new event in. So it's an overnight job. And they talk about that we have a checklist and we go out and we will hold people to account. We have a good system in place, but we give constant feedback. Yeah, but there's something wrong over there, that's not right, and then we bring them back and we get it fixed. And I says, so you constantly give them feedback? And they said, yeah. I says, do you think it would be better if you give feed forward? I was asked to explain it. I says, right, now how often do you come into work? So at the moment, what you're telling me is you come into the environment and you're constantly looking for opportunities to give feedback. You're going to tell them that really what you're pointing out is where the standard hasn't been met in most of those cases. And yes, you might say, oh, it's a lovely setup and things like that. I says, but how often do you come into work and pull something it's set up perfectly? There's nothing wrong with the environment. How often do you want to pull the staff together, pull them all in and go, that's it. You've done it. That's exactly what I'm looking for. That's the standard we aim for. That's the standard I want. That's what we're going to repeat every month. So I always say, how often do you come into work and purposely go looking for feed forward? Or are you always looking for feedback where you'll do the old mayonnaise sandwich trick? And I said, which I'm not a fan of, but how often do you come into work and just say, right, look at that. That's exactly what I was looking for. And then you've created what I call that visible expectation.
Yeah.
That it's ingrained, it's stuck. So they start looking for the standard.
Yeah.
You don't have to look for it anymore. And I say, it's a trick that I learned from sport around using video analysis. It's constant feed forward. So we don't look at, yes, we dissect some of the problems of the weekend, but we're also looking at the video to see when we executed, what were we all doing?
Yeah.
When we got the standard right, where was everybody?
Yeah.
Who was where? And it's that concept. So I learned that. I called it feed forward.
Yeah.
So it's about setting the expectations.
Well, I will certainly start using that, and I will reference you as well. So we'll try and get that personal brand out there.
Yes, Jason's feed forward brand.
Yeah.
You talked a wee bit about nurturing the next generation, and it's something that's close to my heart. I've been involved in various educational projects with people from, I suppose, distance from the job market, but also young people with additional needs. What are you doing in that space yourself, Lex? Or what have you done, and what are you trying to do, I suppose, with nurturing the next generation?
Yeah, so definitely something that's close to my heart as well. When I was younger and not as commercially successful, should we say, in the professional side of things, I just did whatever philanthropy I could that that came my way. And so I went to Cambodia, and I lived in Cambodia at a children's orphanage, which was an orphanage. It was more of an art-based charity. So it helped break the cycle of poverty that was present in Cambodia at the time, and that still is, where children fall into the wrong gangs, the wrong controllers, shall we say, that put them onto negative paths. And this was an art-based charity that basically said, come to the art charity, do what young kids should be doing. They should be doing paper mache. They should be doing art. They should be messing around with paint. They should be exploring their creativity. And then we would curate that, sell that, and then rather than give them the money that they might then use for other different things, we would put that into an educational program for them and say, right, you're going to have your school meals, you're going to have your school books, your uniforms, whatever. So making sure we were creating that positive environment for them. And that was incredibly rewarding. And that sort of set me off, I think, on my path really to sort of seek out whatever I could. And so now I've had some time to reflect on what I want out of my career and what I've got to give. And so I'm very proud to recently be recently starting as a business mentor for the King's Trust, which is going to be very, very exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. So that is helping young people getting into business, whether they are looking at career advice or they might be starting their own business and they're looking for how to overcome marketing or investments or pitch decks, things like that young people just won't have the experience on. And so the King's Trust creates an environment where it's not just me, that there's a whole team of subject matter experts that we can bring in and help each other drive their success forward. So I'm very, very proud to be doing that. And then of course there's just the everyday, nurturing and development that I like to do for young members of the team in the places that I work in my day job, because they're the future leaders. And as I said earlier, I was very fortunate to work with some incredible managers over my career, especially at Gray's in my previous role. First time on a board, first time seeing the real high end level of business, and they were really, really great. And so I've been so lucky. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't pass that on somehow to the younger lot.
Yeah, I think we don't realize how important environment is.
Yeah.
And how you nurture, you put people in the right environment and they will thrive.
Yeah.
But we have the power to build that environment.
Yeah, I actually call it something that I don't know if I picked it up through sort of research and reading, and it just came into my mind and I thought that I'd made it up. So apologies if it's researched and I haven't, but I call it like a success chamber. It's a bit like we were talking earlier when you said about a friend of yours that was in the academia and it was, creating that controlled environment. I try and do it in business when I can. Well, I call it a success chamber, where what would all the things need to be that would create that successful environment for that person to do well. And as a leader and as a manager, it is your responsibility to try and create that environment around that person. And so whatever the cues may be, whether it's training, soft skills, hard skills, mentality, team support, whatever it may be, remuneration package, fighting hard, when you get the inevitable, we can't raise salaries, making sure that they see you as that person that's beating their drum for them and creating that success chamber around them. I think that's really important. And I found it to be quite useful.
It's really interesting because I was recording some stuff up and it's based on my view of the COM-B model. So it was by Susan Mitchell and Robert West.
No.
So it's a behavioral science model that we would use. It's a toolkit. Think of it as a toolkit. And from an analysis point of view, what you're looking at is that behavior is made up of three elements, and it's capability, opportunity, motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get those three ingredients right, then potentially have the target behavior you're looking for. It originally, I think, was created based on the American judicial system of, to commit a crime, first the person had to have the capability, then they had to have the opportunity, and then they had to have the motivation to do it. So these scientists then said, well, this actually applies to...
Yeah, let's flip that.
So they flipped it into target behavior. So if that's what we get when we have bad behavior, can we target a behavior in that sense as well? So if I want an outcome, so what they say is if you want somebody to open that door, literally, then first of all, they need the capability. So they have to have either the physical and knowledge to be able to do that. So they have the physical capability and the knowledge to be able to open that door now or in the future. So if they don't have it now, then it's up to you. And that's where opportunity kicks in.
Super interesting. Yeah.
So then opportunity comes in, and it's based from the resource, basically the physical and social opportunity as well. So do they have time, resources, but then do they have the social cues and things like that to go along with it? So once you have capability and opportunity, you now have a potential behavior. But now, why should I do it?
Yeah.
So what's the
Motivation? Yeah.
But then we have to create the motivational factors to get that outcome, and in a business. So there's a tool and there's an outer layer to this that's too big to go into, but it's like you carry out an analysis, understand whether it's capability, and then you have some tools. So you could say, right, what we need to do is, the problem is incapability. They don't have the knowledge at this stage. So education program, or the opportunity is that there's a rule or regulation in the way which prevents them to have the motivation to do it. The chances are that they'll be called out by a manager because it's against guidelines. So can you start to see this whole thing? It's an amazing model, used a lot of behavioral science use it, psychologists use it, and I'm one of these people. I think you need to teach it to managers and leaders. It's such a clever tool, and it is just a toolkit to be able to use, because once you get that motivation, that's where I talk about these. It's the hardest, but also when you understand the concept of motivational operants, that you can get the best out of people.
100%.
So if, what's the value altering effect of a motivation, and in terms of what gives you that want to go and do it, but then what evokes behavior, and then what abolishes it. And there's a brilliant Longthorne and McGill wrote a paper on this using sport as an example, and they spoke about a runner, and it was like, if you're running a marathon, so the value altering effect of water when you're running is that you become thirsty. So it then evokes behaviors to quench your thirst, which is go and get the water. Once you've quenched your thirst, it's now behavior altering effect is, I no longer need water. So the motivation's changed now. The motivation's gone. And I sat and was listening to that, and I thought, it's applicable to everything. And I use the example, if you want to go on holiday. So if you want to go on holiday, it alters the value of saving money. So my behavior changes. So now I start saving money. Then I go on my holiday. So the value of saving changes. And you see, it becomes, so it evokes a behavior, but then it gets abolished because I've just finished my holiday, no longer need to save.
Yeah.
So now I have to find new motivations.
Yeah.
What do I do with that money? But you can actually apply that. So I need somebody to create a marketing campaign. So what's the value altering effects do I need to put in place to get them to do that? What evokes the behavior? What abolishes the behavior? And once you understand that framework, I go, wow, this is actually easy.
Yeah.
And I just think we need to be teaching this because behavioral scientists and psychologists understand this, but they keep it to themselves.
Yeah.
No.
And it's funny as an example, I think, of that. I think a lot of people a lot of business leaders could take away from that is something that we were doing in a previous role about board meetings. There was always this, the decisions that are made at the board level, they're not made by, so there's the middle managers and there was the separation. Well, they're not made by us. We don't really know what's going on. It's kind of behind closed doors, and then we'll get the notes and we'll get the strategy and it all filtered down. But then it was almost mystified, as why the decisions were being made versus some of the practicalities that were actually happening on a day-to-day basis. And then one of the things, but as a board, we were aware of that. And so as one of the things that we changed was immediate, and one of the things that I did was immediate feedback to the team the second I came out of the board meeting. And so it wasn't sort of over time that might have had different parts, coming at it from different peoples and different stakeholders. It was I'd come straight out of the board meeting, go straight down to the team and go, right, quick huddle, tea, biscuits, 20 minutes. I'm going to talk about the 5 big things that we said and the 5 big things that you contributed. And here's what they're doing. And here's our big thing. It's all fresh in your mind after you've had the debate. And as a board, they've said that if we can do these 5 things in the next 18 months, that's success. And the team immediately, even though they weren't part of that discussion, just had that immediate, okay, right, I'm part of that now. And the behavioral changes and the success that happened when we started doing that were unbelievable versus the previous 3 years when it was more of a, oh no, that's above the station. We don't need to worry about that. They felt empowered. They felt part of it. And the marketing and the brand campaigns that came out of it were fabulous.
Yeah, I'd done a load of research, and it was what I was trying to understand when we were talking about behaviors was what's the impact of leadership on some of the biggest disasters or downfalls in the corporate world. So I went into done a lot of research on Boeing, NASA, where massive disasters that were known globally, and dug in to research papers, documentaries to try and understand. And it was very interesting that when you started to dig in, you could near put a date on it. You could literally, Boeing in particular, you could literally put a date on when they went from household, everybody wants to work for them, they're an absolutely unbelievable organization, into that quality slide, even to this very day where they still haven't, they're still making corporate mistakes in that context of leadership. And you go in, there was a conference that I was, and I can't remember the girl's name, and she used a phrase, and I thought, I love it. That's exactly what these companies need to hear. And she called it the hippo effect.
Mm-hmm.
Highest individual paid person's opinion stands.
Yeah.
She says, what happens is that these organizations host meetings, but the first person to speak is the hippo.
Yeah.
What tends to happen is agreement that I'm in a leadership role, but I want to get on the executive board. So I will tend to then spin what I was going to say in favor of you because you're the highest. I want you to notice me. And if there's some alignment, you might pull me up the ladder. So when you start to look at some of the disasters, corporate disasters, like some Boeing, you could literally pinpoint it to the takeover of McDonnell Douglas and then make a decision to shift corporate headquarters from the main factory into Chicago so they didn't have to have a conversation with the floor. So they got the leadership team out of the way. And then NASA was the disaster with the sales where low-level engineers were saying, these are fallible, these things aren't made to operate at those temperatures. But the hippo kept saying, we need to get this up with billions of pounds of investment from government, and they launched, you know what I mean? So it's very interesting. I'm going, both had hippos. And so I now encourage people, the hippo should be the last person to speak in them.
Yeah.
Hippo goes in, asks for opinions, and then decide what they want to say rather than go in and tell them, because what will happen is you'll just get compliance in most cases.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's very interesting.
A lot of businesses could learn from that.
Oh, 100%. I was lovely. Like, you never had a name for it. I knew there was things like groupthink that people said, theoretical underpinnings. But I can't remember the girl's name. I'll have to find it. But she used that phrase, and I thought, what an amazing phrase, the hippo. So, are you a hippo or are you an empowerer?
We could get people to research it, actually. Put it down in the comments. And then, then you can...
if you can remember the lady that come up with the hippo effect, we need her name. Trustly. Yeah. Look, Lex, I've loved having a conversation, and I'm going to finish with the Emily question, as I've called it.
Okay.
So, we had a young lady on by the name of Emily Bond, Emily Rocket Scientist. Now, what we tend to do with some of the podcasts, we used to have this question, we called it the ChatGPT question, where we fed you information into ChatGPT and asked it to come up with a question. But that's done, it's dated. So I was trying to think of what can I come up with this time? And the very first episode of this series, we had a rocket scientist on. So I was thinking, what could I ask a rocket scientist? That would be a bit of fun. And then I thought, remember there used to be a program, I don't know whether you remember, Room 101?
Yes.
Where they used to put the thing into Room 101.
Yeah. I love that show.
So I says, right, what we're going to do is have a Room 101 question.
Okay.
So my question was, if you could fire something off into space today, what would it be and why?
Wow, there's too many things, I think. I've got to think from a business perspective, what are the parameters? Otherwise, we'll be here all evening otherwise.
We'll go with business. We'll think of it from maybe, if you want a marketing, social media, whatever you think, something around that field.
Yeah.
I suppose it aligns with what we've been talking about.
I think probably something that we touched on earlier would be social media algorithms, because I think they were designed to make things better. And I think in almost all cases, they've made things worse
Yeah.
in the sense that they create these echo chambers where, you search one thing or you try and follow one thing, and then it just models you into this robot of this, oh, well, that means all of these different things and extrapolations, which, the way AI is going, I think, there's amazing applications for that for sure. But in social media, it just seems to, I don't think anyone's cracked it yet. And I would encourage them hopefully to keep working on it, because I think it's taking the social out of social media. And the whole point is it's about people, and it's about how we interact with each other and how we change and how we, it's the new search engine. It's always evolving. It's always changing. An algorithm, social media algorithm, should I say, tends to try and put something far more formulaic and strict on something that should be incredibly open-ended. And so, yeah, if I could fire that off, I probably would.
Yeah, I think totally agree, because I just think I look at the challenges of our young people.
Yeah.
Like I think I've said this before at times. The biggest challenge I had was whether the car drove through my goal post because I had them set up in the middle of the street. And, hold on a minute, mister, he's going to score a goal. We didn't have mobile phones and the challenges of, and I think algorithms perpetuate a lot of the biases and challenges we have in society, and our young people are faced with unbelievable challenges with, how they look.
Self-image and
Am I liked? Am I not liked? And I mean, a grandparent once said to me, "You'll never know how popular you are, because you'll never know how many people was at your funeral. So I might have 1 million followers on TikTok. How many of them is going to turn up to your funeral?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Let's send her to live with me."
Yeah.
Very important. So yeah, 100%. If I pull the lever or push the door, it's away up there.
Oh, is it? Okay,
It's
good.
gone. It's gone.
Thank
But
you.
I'm going to pass that over with our special guest on the mixing desk over there, Martin Irvine. So what we're going to do is give Martin the same question. Martin, what would you fire off into space?
Controversial. Manifestation.
God, I thought he was going to say the wife.
No, manifestation. Not in its entirety. I believe in positive thinking, that you attack each day with a positive mindset and stuff, nothing else. But I do see a lot of people using it as a get out. I'm going to manifest something. The universe is going to bring it to me. What I hear is, you're not going for it then. You're waiting, sitting back, waiting on someone else bringing what you want. So, as I says, I'm not attacking all positive thinking and proactive and just being positive. But the idea that there's a lot of people now, whether it's the law of attraction, the law of attraction doesn't work without action. So for people that are just, I'm just going to manifest something, I'm just going to sit here and hope that the universe brings me it without me having to earn it or work for it. Yeah, I would send that off.
Yeah, I think because of the growth mindset or that sort of positive thinking is about the incremental improvements you make to get what you're looking for.
Yeah.
It's not,
it's almost like you don't manifest it. You actually just earn it. Yeah. And I think that's
thinking alone.
Yeah.
Isn't going to bring you anything. And I think, and I agree. I think, again, social media is maybe one of the key factors in terms of creating what you're talking about, is that you see people sitting on a beach with a laptop. This is the lifestyle for you. And as they see they want the outcome. I mean,
I read once, and again, it's not the sort of, it's fact true, but it said that it costs around £35,000 a year to portray yourself as a millionaire on social media. A watch, a nice car, one decorated corner of one room of your house, and then out for dinner once a week. And then that's you basically living that millionaire lifestyle through a very narrow spotlight. Like, you just have to take 1 or 2 photos during that week of those moments and then portray you as that millionaire lifestyle.
That's really interesting. And the point is as well, if you were a millionaire and if you did have, access to funds and access to things that most other people did, you wouldn't care if those people wanted to see you doing those things anyway. You'd be absolutely happy doing the things that you were doing and be focusing on probably much more wholesome things and self-improvement and all those things. So it is actually counterintuitive to the whole endeavor, which is a shame.
But is that not the social media thing again, where we spoke earlier that if you put enough untruths in front of somebody, at some point it becomes the truth. You know what I mean?
Fake news.
Yeah. So, and I always talk about this with young, like I can remember working on a project and had a group of young people in a room, and what I got them to do, just A4 page, draw a picture of themselves in the middle, and then draw off all their social media, and then ask the question, how much do you pay for your social media accounts? Nothing. It's free. So what's for sale? And they look at you and, right, well, you are for sale. That's how social media makes its money. It sells you, your content, your behaviors, your activity to the world. So you are for sale. Now, I'm going to ask you, you've just written down there, what information do you put in Facebook? What do you put in WhatsApp? What do you put in Snapchat? Now, you've written on that piece of paper everything. So you've your date of birth, your address, your phone number, all this. Would you now be happy going and sellotaping that to Marks and Spencer's window down in Belfast city centre? No way. Everybody know who I was and where I am. But you've done it.
Yeah.
It's called social media.
Yeah.
You've already done it. It's actually a bigger window.
Yeah.
And it's this thing that like young people don't realize this, don't, that what you're posting lives there and it doesn't come back. It's very hard to take back. It's not like pulling a poster off a window. It's so hard to take back.
I think people don't look at social media from, it's actually two sides of a coin. Like we mentioned earlier on about consumer and creator, that even in what you're saying about what you create and what you put onto social media is always there. It may come back to haunt you, whatever else it is like that, or you'll be judged by it. Like, there's almost like jury by social media these days.
Yeah.
But all from that standpoint is very much about the consumer. So what you're saying there about you watch one or two videos and then you're brought in that echo chamber, and it's basically social media is trying to keep you on there as long as time. And what made me think of that was when you turn around and says, what is it you're selling there? Technically, what you're giving away and what social media want is your attention. The longer they have your eyes, the more influence they have over you, whether it's to hit you with ads, campaigns, or even just, even if you consider a campaign in terms of influencing someone to buy a particular hockey stick or a particular rugby ball. But obviously although that's from the consumer point of view, but as well as that, there's a lot of mean sort of campaigns out there now to influence people in their opinions, their values, and everything goes along that. So I think everyone just automatically looks at their biggest influence in the terms of social media is what they put onto it. But again, what you're actually giving away while you're putting that on there and then consuming is your time, your attention, your values, and your beliefs.
I think the term was doom scrolling a little while ago, wasn't it? And I'm almost glad that term came around because it gives negative connotations to it. And I think people are looking at it like that. So as part of people's, mental health journeys and focus on their physical and mental well-being, they're actively saying, I don't want to doom scroll before I go to bed at night. I mean, I'm a big believer in a bedtime routine, making sure that you set yourself up for a good night rest so that you got the next day to be creative and healthy and do all these wonderful things. And that's lots of people are doing that, which I'm really, really pleased about. And eliminating doom scrolling from evening social media on their phones is something that people are being quite active about, almost to the point of putting their phones in a little Faraday box so that they can't use it before they go to bed.
Well, I
think it's great.
I've got into the habit of when, like, if I'm going away, so me and the wife are heading away in a few weeks' time, and what I've tend to do in the evenings is the last 3 or 4 posts that I look at before I go is I actually search the place I'm going to.
Yeah.
And just find restaurant, beach, and just find some nice things to think about in 4 or 5 weeks' time, and that's it. So you actually go on a high.
Yeah.
You haven't watched some conspiracy theory or some madness.
Yeah.
That you actually just finished the evening on a high. That's what I have to look forward to.
Oh, that's good.
And I found it mentally just so much better just to try and find something that you love or enjoy and make that your last 3 or 4 posts to watch. Just make that's your search at the end of the night.
Yeah.
Find something that you love or enjoy, no matter what the day's been about. Love and enjoy, and watch 3 or 4 things that you got to kick out of before you go to bed.
Yeah.
And I think that's just something like that. It's just routines, rituals that you can build into your day.
Yeah.
Technically, those last things that you give your attention to, you're going to bed with and spending all night with.
Yeah.
And I've thought about it, like I would try and operate what I call a digital sunset, like 8 p.m, phone goes away, almost contact with the outside world is cut off, because you may have a business inquiry, something may happen and everything else, but ultimately can't do anything about it until 9 o'clock the next morning. But really, what is the point of you lying in bed, worrying about it all throughout that night? The whole idea of, stress is the tax we pay and things, which may or may not happen. And it's like, why? So whether you read that message at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, or whether you read it at 9 o'clock the next day, does not really make a difference when there's no time to do the action with it. But in terms of, in a romantic sort of way, who would you take to bed with you? It's like, would you take all the troubles and the negativity of the world to bed with you and spend the night? No.
I love that term digital. I've got hippo and digital sunset. I'm taking these terms away. I'm going to try and get those out there. That's really nice. I like it. Yeah.
Well, I think it goes without saying that algorithms got the chop. They're up into space, and manifestation is not too far on the coattails of algorithms. But I think there's a very close link between them, both of them. Lex, can I say thank you so much for joining us today? I think
you're very welcome.
Very, very insightful for people listening, especially I think because everybody's a marketing manager now. I think, or like to think of themselves as it, and they don't really understand the real challenges behind that, and also to Martin on the mix at S, because adds so much value in terms of his own work on the social media and the personal brand in front as well. And that's why I thought that when we were setting up, I said, I got a mic. We need a mic on you as well, because there's going to be some synergies here. So it was lovely to see that come together as well. So thank you both.
Thank you.
And I'll definitely keep in touch, and we'll get you back at some stage. I'd maybe love to do a live event with you.
That'd be amazing.
If we could do it.
I would love that.
I think what you talk about and getting a couple of people on a panel could be a really, really good panel discussion. So thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to it.
And thank you, Martin.